Hey, what is up, Patreon? It's Rich. All right, welcome to another video on clothing. What I thought I would do today is we're going to hit pants. And this is going to be interesting because I'll be honest, I haven't really done massive amounts of pant studies, even myself. So what we're going to do is I think it will be helpful because you'll get to see my approach to breaking the stuff down and you know what I always recommend with trying to study stuff that looks so complex. You know, you look up here and see things like this. It can be difficult to really kind of get your ground, you know, like plant your feet. And so what we try to do is we try to find consistent things that happen with pants at certain positions, like when the knee starts to get bent. What really goes on? What's the mechanics of that? There's a lot of seams on military style pants. And that can affect the folds because you can see right here, because this is a stiff piece of fabric, it starts to stop these really beautiful folds from continuing completely across the pant leg. So this is just going to be an introduction into this, but we're still going to try to find at least 3 to 5 things that seem to consistently happen with pants. So any of these will be a fine place to start. One thing I am going to do is I'm going to up-res it though, so that my draw over is at a higher resolution. And welcome to all the new patrons that have signed up. You're going to have a lot of fun. And like I did mention, at the end of August, the tiers are going to change. The lowest tier will be $3, but I'm going to be offering a lot more content for every tier, and I'll explain it more as I kind of move along into it. But it's going to be better. I'm going to offer a beginner to intermediate tier for people that want educational content that's based on more of a beginner and going into intermediate. And then I'm going to have an intermediate to advanced tier, because the thing is I feel guilty sometimes doing so much fundamentals where there's people here that are more advanced that want something maybe a little more challenging for them. So I have to be you know, aware of that and provide content for those people too, so everyone will have options. And again, it'll be better. It's going to be a lot more organized, and it'll also be a lot more consistent in terms of when I upload stuff and what you can expect on what day of the week. So it'll be fun. It'll like I said, it's gonna be a lot more work on my end, but at the same time, it's gonna ultimately make it a much better experience for everyone. So first things first, we're gonna try to find our basic structure, and these are risky poses. Why would you think that I say that these are risky poses to learn from, or that there's a potential bad thing from it? Is they're pretty much flat and side views, and that's always, I think, not a great way to think about form, because the problem is ultimately you don't have a lot of, this is a backplane. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to recommend something that's a little bit of a tangent in terms of this video, but still worth seeing, is if you didn't watch the Sci-Fi Channel, Todd McFarlane, The Hell I Won't, I think it's called, something like that. It's definitely worth checking out. I had already watched most of it, and I finished it up yesterday. It was fun. So, let me get rid of this layer then. Oh, darn it, I did it on the wrong layer. Shoot. All right, let me go back. It's all right. Like, I wanted to draw this on its own layer so we could look at what's going on, because it's important to... Well, here's the interesting thing, is this will be a step that you skip when you get better at this. And most pencilers that I see, like a Mark Silvestri or any of these guys that really can draw well, is that they are normally going to block in stuff like this. They already know sort of the basic fundamentals of what goes on in a pose like this, and that's great for them, but it's not really great for us in terms of learning it. And this actually, if you see, this foot is going back into perspective. So that's more how they're going to set up their drawings just from the get-go, and they can work it out. You know, we might not be able to if we don't understand how to draw this. So we're going to put our wrinkles and creases over this form. And now I can do this. So I'm just putting in my simple tubes. And these are great, great things to know and love and be able to move everywhere. Okay, so now I'm gonna get into this really quick. This foot, if you actually look at this foot, is going back into space. I'm going to block this in for you just a little bit so that you see that it's actually a form, because it's really important. Muy importante. If it went around. This one's more of a flat kind of vibe. But, you know, like if you're more of a beginner artist, there's a good possibility that you would draw this foot as a side view, meaning that you would basically replicate this foot here. You're starting to weaken your drawing, so that's a little bit of a drawing tip for you, on top of the fact that we're going to try to figure out clothes on this. So now we can get rid of this. We can see. So that's the basic shape that we're dealing with. But do you see how this foot is going back into space? It's a cube. Sorry, it's a little tiny bit off my line. I don't know what is going on with that. It's a little closer. But anyway, but there's the back of the heel. This goes in a little bit, comes back out and around. And this form goes like this. And this is, you could either think of it as a tube. It's tilted a little bit more, so it's kind of coming towards us a little bit more like that. But okay, so now we'll get to the clothes idea. One fold that we saw immediately. Well, what happens with fabric is it's going to either pull from areas, meaning that there's tension points. Okay, but we need to find the tension points because we don't necessarily know them. The other thing the fabric will do is it will hang off of low points. If these were very, very thin pants, they would have a different effect. So now we can lower the opacity on this just the tiniest bit. And we're going to look where our start and stop points are for these folds, because this is going to be pretty consistent. If your knee is out, it's pulling from the top of the knee. There's a pull from here because that's a top plane. You see that? That sticks out. So this is pulling the fabric. And where's it pulling from? The low point on the ass. That's a technical term. You see this? So that we know is always going to happen. You can see it happens in reverse here. This is kind of the top point. If you look at this leg, where is the top point of this shape? You might get confused and think that it's up here. It is higher, but this is protruding and this is protruding. So it comes from the butt and goes over. And then this is a crunch fold. You see this crunch fold? Actually, I'm trying to remember what book it was that had this stuff in it, and you can see here we've got another fold, and this will kind of replicate it too somewhere. Sort of doing it here, and it's kind of doing it here. So we know going into this, we can probably force in some sort of from there to there. And then remember, these pants have an interesting cut on them, meaning not cut, but sorry, that pleat. This pleat is the blocker because it's very stiff. It's like if we had you know, the dress shirts, how they had like a really hard edge. That hard edge is gonna start to make fabric want to bunch here, you know. And what's funny is you can kind of even imagine, remember our Y fold? You could squeeze one of those in here and it would look fine. And you can kind of see it happening. Do you see right here? Here's our Y. And again, if you don't understand any of this, that's fine right now, because all you're doing is you're just getting a familiarity with this. This isn't really the lesson. This is what we're going to start to try to observe on our other pants that are in a similar position. So now let's try to find another pair of pants. We'll leave this open. And the other thing that I'm going to do for the new tiers is you're going to have the ability to get access to all these files. So I'll leave them in TIFF or PDF format with the layers intact, so you can kind of goof around with this stuff. So again, I'm really going to try to make something quite nice for everyone. Let me see if do we have one that's similar? This is kind of, well, here we can look at this. This is interesting. A, C, B. Give myself another layer for this. Gonna turn the opacity down here. Okay, so the one that we did have in the other pants was this. The one that comes from his butt. Let me do this. I'm gonna draw the simple form. It's funny because these are all side views. Next time that I grab these, I'll get these at different angles. They're close to side views, I should say. So here's the hips. Oops, sorry. I want you to feel this form here. That's the, and this is the side. This is starting to go around, and this is coming to the front. So let's look at that as its own shape. I can even and this goes under. So the thing is this is actually the bottom of the butt cheek. This is where the leg is going in right here. So the ass actually comes around and we're seeing the bottom of it, just so that you know. Little subtleties like that are very important, and those will be sticking points where you can't figure out your drawing so well, is weird stuff like that. It's like we had a really great example of a Spider-Man pose where the torso was bending back and we could see the back shoulder. I always use this example because I thought it was so damn cool. But it was kind of a shot like this. But Spider-Man was so reeled back that we were actually getting to see his back, even though it was kind of a side view. But the head was down, and so we were starting to see his back coming around. You know, then you could have the arms out and going away or in. But anyway, a little bit of the same idea going on here. And then, so this is the leg that I want us to focus in on, because it's got this similar fold thing, which is this. So it's coming from up underneath the ass and going over. And remember, we think in threes. Seems to work good. 1, 2, 3. And those are crush folds in here, meaning that the you can usually pretty much guarantee that where there's a joint on the body, you're going to get a few of these. Take that out, kind of got away from it, but, and you can do the same thing in threes. These are fictional representations of what we see, but the point is do you see 1, 2, 3? It seems to work. And what did we talk about in the video yesterday? Is that cascading effect? It kind of is there. Do you see 1, 2, 3? It's an interesting little fold. And the thing is when you find anomalies, meaning that like, this is interesting. It's just this piece of fabric here, the seam, is grabbing this piece of material, and so it's kind of holding it in place here and here, and it's creating this like almost like vacuum of space in here. And so this might not happen on all pants, but if you like this, you can kind of memorize this little shape and use it at other times. So this is the takeaway from me for me on this is to remember this. And again, you can kind of have your little thing here, but let's look at these really quick, because these are beautiful folds that you'll see Alex Ross, a lot of people use, which is it's that nice piece of fabric, and then you see it tucks into the shadow, so you get this really, really cool. I'm gonna draw the fold first, the piece of fabric, so you can just see the fabric. So this is the piece of fabric, and then the shadow that it creates has got a little bit of a different vibe. It kind of does this, but those are really, really cool, and you can do those thin. You'll see them on the girl's pants. Hers are just really, really thin, like these, like on her knees. You see these, like this, and then that shadow underneath there. And you could put a bunch. You could, like, if you really wanted to make the fabric feel like it's tight right here and kind of clingy. Again, this has got a seam here, so this ends up being like a padded piece of the material that can be a little tighter. And what ends up happening with these things, and I saw it in the shirts yesterday, is if you have a t-shirt on someone, I'm just going to do the most generic thing, but kind of in here you'll start to get the same ideas here. It's really, really subtle, and it's one of those things where we're going to have to do our own study of what happens in the center of the body. Sometimes it can pull up towards things, you know, depending on the cut of the shirt and what if the person is doing anything. It can also have sort of this feel if it's tucked in. But yeah, it kind of depends on what's going on around it. But yeah, the middle of the shirt can be like a little weird. And she's got little, like, this is a seam and this is a seam, and so she's getting the little crush fold patterns. All right, let's look at the buttons really quick and how they hold the fabric. You can see, I mean, how much work this is to initially get the ideas of this. So let's go. We're gonna put in our under drawing. So feel those hips, and then here's this leg. And this one's kind of going away from us, and this one's coming forward more. It's not a lot, but it is actually this is the leg that the weight is on, and this leg is actually coming forward. So there's a subtle kind of vibe of this. I'm amplifying it a little bit, but this one goes back. But you can see as it starts to get up over the hip, you see how these folds start to kind of come up, and what does it have to do? It has to go around this shape, and her crotch area goes like this, so there's tension emanating here. The fabric is let's see, this kind of crosses across, and then everything is being pulled up here. Let's see if we can find another front view. I grabbed some back views because it's like, yeah, do you see his crotch? The fabric is like, there's the emanating one. This is interesting right here. It's all pulling towards the knee. We got these crush folds. You can see, man, this is some tough shit. This will take work. We'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. I'll show you any tricks and tactical approaches that I discover on these as we move along. This is really, really cool. This is just shit that you just like embrace. You go, okay, like what is going on here? Because this looks so cool and could look really great in a drawing. And it's kind of a cape. It's got a cape vibe. We'll look at this. These two things will be the last thing that we do for today. And this is beautiful too. Man, there's some great folds on these pants. All right, we'll break all three of these down really quick and see what we got going on here. A, C, B. You can see why these studies are so important and why it is actually better to get this stuff from the source, meaning from real reference and real clothing and stuff like that. Because any artist is going to interpret this a certain way, and they're going to simplify it, even though it could be very, very detailed. It's going to be stylized, and we really, really do need it from the source. I think it's incredibly important. So one thing we can already see that's obstructing, this is a very, very strong piece of fabric. It is actually creating resistance. And this is too. I'll actually next time look for pants that don't have these seams. Although, you know, I mean, that's the thing is fashion in terms of the gear that you put on your characters is very, very important because it ends up being your style and kind of your voice. And if you draw quote unquote whack clothes, your drawings aren't going to look cool. They're going to look dated and weird and stuff like that. So this is what we've got going on here. If we pretend like the kneecap is sitting here, and then I'll draw this on top. This piece of fabric is doing this. Sorry, I lost the line. It's going over this. And we got our little Y shape. And then this. 1, 2, and that'll be our 3. Alright, so let's do this one more time. And we can even just, we'll pretend like we're doing it on this leg. So, like, if this is the kneecap, it's going to go like this. I'm just going to emulate the exact fold that we just did, but I'm going to pretend like it could have happened here. And that's that tuck in, that crevice. And then we're going to have 1, 2, 3. And that kind of stuff will give you a level of believability in your work that just, it's like, this is what I'm talking about, the artistic stylization of things. And that doesn't even make sense really on this leg based on the pants. So you kind of see that you can sort of bend the rules a little bit to yourself if you choose to. So here's this again. This piece of fabric does this, and it goes around it. If this was a cylinder, well, it is a cylinder. Sorry, it's kind of narrow. It's going like this. But this area right here is going around it. If you could see through this leg, it would probably go up here somewhere and then create new wrinkles that are going like this. That would be my guess, is it would twist around it. So the whole fabric would pull up to here, and then we already know the crotch does this kind of thing. The pant legs have this weird thing that will happen. These are relaxed, so they're not going to pull across. But the second you start to spread the legs out, there's going to be that. And then this was the other thing that we had, was just a little piece of fabric that went up and around. And then we could have it drape, drape, drape. And then if this is got any kind of seam, we're going to start to get those crush folds. Or you can have this thing. Let me emulate this a little bit. Hold on, let's try that again. So we'll say that, and then what's this do? kind of tucks in here. Oh man, this is so good. Meaning so good to work on. This really is so huge. And you don't have to master this. That was the one thing. This is a really great takeaway from the Todd McFarlane video. And he says, Todd kind of says the same thing in most of his interviews. So any good interview with Todd that's fairly long, you're going to get about the same information. He's told the stories and given advice enough times. But he says straight out, I'm not the best artist. I don't know anatomy as good as Jim Lee. I don't know anatomy as good as Marc Silvestri. I don't know anatomy, as good as really great artists. But what I do know, I'm able to amplify, and that's the thing. That's how these artists in 2 or 3 years of professional work either completely blossom into something awesome. They don't know all the stuff that we think that they know. It's not as easy for them to do as everyone thinks. There's a level of confidence that they have to be able to sell the sizzle of what they've drawn. And it's like a poker hand, you go, all right, do you believe that there's, this many muscles on a leg or not? Do you, if I do this, is it's like, what's gonna sell you on this? What if I make his thighs this big and his knees are just these massive things, and I take his feet and I make his feet huge? Where do you disconnect? If I put veins running over every part of his body, does that look cool? So it's having 30 to 40% of the information, and then kind of how you place it in, and then do you have enough stuff that looks good? That's the thing. Todd knew enough anatomy to be able to give you a semblance of cool things. If you know enough of these fake folds, I always call everything fake, or I'll say like bullshit, because it takes years to really completely like master this stuff, but you can get in there with some minimal what would you call it, like minimal familiarity with this stuff and still do good work. So we're gonna look at this one. You can see right here, do you see how this curves around? So this is the shape, and then it starts to mellow here, but this is a Y. It's one of those Y shapes. Really, it's a little crushed right here, but this is the Y. That's what's going on. And then this just tucks in over itself. Not just, but it's tucking in. This comes out, and then this little piece goes in. So this is where little subtleties of like, can you draw something like this and have it look like it tucked into something else? Can you... Sorry, I'm not focused. I'm drawing nonsensical shapes. Let me do this where it would actually make some sense. It's easier to just draw it on the form. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to say that it's really, like, the fabric is super tight right here. And then up here we haven't worked on enough to really have an opinion on it, so let's not try to fudge something like that. But even here you could see where you could go like this. And then here again it could be the same idea, but he does have these little, like, the I call them the crush folds, but there's 3 right here if you can see them. So it's like this piece of fabric overlaps this and this. And if we really look at the shape, what we've got is, you can indicate it with just the shadow, meaning like the shadow is kind of like this. So if you can sort of create the triangle shape You don't want them to be too even, you know. And try to picture like what you think might be going on here. You know, if I was going to place them and I didn't have any sort of idea, I would probably put one here, and then one here, one here, one here, one there. But that's just a guess. You know, if they were here, I'd put one here, one here, one here, one here, one here, maybe one going up. But this would look fine. And again, you can go in and put a few droppers. But these are fun looking pants, you know? I mean, you've seen people that have this is an interesting example, but if you follow Eric Canetti really can draw well, and he draws a tremendous amount of material. He's always knocking out very, very detailed things, but he can get very, very stylish with this stuff. But he knows, you know, probably 80 to 90% of this stuff very intimately, and then he just runs and guns with it, you know. But try to feel these shapes and play around with this. Okay, so that's a nice chunk of introductory to pants. You can tell they're gonna be challenging. I think they're a little bit harder than shirt sleeves, short and long. What do you think? Especially with seams. You know, I picked these tactical style pants with the pockets and stuff like that. And we'll get into the pockets too, because really what you're dealing with at that point then is, depending on the position of the leg, is it's going to be a little bit of a perspective problem, you know. If a leg is going away from us up, you may see more of the bottom. You know, it's possible, like things like that. So it just depends. And then, you know, stuff can curve around, as you see here, where it's going up and over the thing. So we'll get there. If you could learn this in 20 minutes, everybody would be able to do it good. But I think we made a lot of progress for 20 to 30 minute videos. So, all right, have a great day. I'll talk to you all later. Bye. And play around with this.